Actually, Mars, car, models. You niggas should be pissing me. Right, I get my haters out of my radar.
Take a chill, breathe, got this on the beat. Like a prayer, some a verse on repeat. I admit it, they can never let me off, but when I hit is in trouble.
Okay. Oh, thank you very much. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Mbulise nina bekunene makhosini makhosi. My name is Thembi Nkosi Colin Hlachwayo, and I am here on the capacity of project manager for this process of the consultations for the national consultations in terms of the development of the B-BBEE sector code for the events, technical and production services industry. I'm here representing the National Department of Sport, Arts and Culture, and this process is supported by the department itself, with the partnership with the Department of Trade and Industry and Competition, DTIC. The two departments are directly involved in the process because the Department of Sport, Arts and Culture is the lead or line ministry or line department of the sector cultural creative industries, under which the technical or events, technical and production services are located. And then the DTIC is got the mandate of the BEE itself and the Act and all of that. So what we do as the Department of Sport, Arts and Culture, we then come in to support on facilitation, strategic support to the sector. And the sector itself had initiated this process quite some time ago. And then we came on board at some point where then we work with the members of the different associations who were set up by the Ministry of DTIC as a forum to assist in facilitating this process. You will see them here in front of you. They will be introduced shortly. So basically, my work here is to greet you, welcome you, apologize for the inconvenience of a late start, and there were other technicalities that we were sorting out. And us being the technical services, we know that environment. And the National Department of Sport, Arts and Culture is not on its own here today. It's also with, as you can see over there, the Cultural Affairs and Sport. I'm with my colleague there, Mr. William Masimola. I'm sure most of you would be familiar with him. I believe, having done so, I'm also traveling with our colleagues from the department itself, the gentlemen and the ladies who were there at the front. They are from the National Department as well. So the day is over to you. The day is being live streamed. We will be recording the speakers as they do the presentations. And we encourage that the participants today, we talk directly or even broader, but on the main to enhance the discussion around the sector code, what you think of it, and the forum would have presented some things to you, and then you will be in the position to challenge, support, or even do other motivations. On that note, may I not belabor any further and introduce Ms. Lucia Mukoka, who is going to be our moderator today, and then be facilitating the rest of the proceedings today. I believe that at 12 or at 1 o'clock we will be having a lunch break until 2 o'clock, and then later after that we will come back to wrap up. And thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Have a great day. Thank you.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Colin. Good morning, colleagues. Today we're here to really consult with you As Colin has indicated, my name is Lucia Mokoka. I'm your moderator for the session. I've got the forum members as well. And we're just here to consult with you with the sector codes for the industry. And I will call upon, we have, before I call upon the chairperson, we have provided notepad and pens. Please make notes whilst the chairperson is going to come through, and then when the presentation is done, because we're going to have an interaction session where we take questions upon everything that has been presented. I know the codes were circulated as well. You might not have enough time to go through the codes now. Please note that if you don't have enough time to go through the codes now and you still want to make comments, written comments will be accepted. And then with that said, I'm going to call the chairperson to come welcome and give us the purpose of the day. Thank you.
Thank you, moderator. Thank you, Mr. Hlachwayo, and once more welcome you all. We really appreciate you making time to come be with us here. We, as the ETPTF, Event Technical Production Services Forum, have developed a scorecard. As you might be aware, that this scorecard never existed before, still doesn't exist. We are in the process of gazetting this scorecard so that it regulates and legalizes the activities of our sector. And the copies that are in front of you are, of course, in a draft format. Today, it's the second of the sessions that we're going to be doing throughout the country in different provinces, the purpose of which is to garner further inputs into you. The document that we have produced, we're saying, this is how far we have gone, comparing it to the generic scorecard and what other sectors have done. This is what we have done, and we're saying, with your further input, we can improve on this document and make it a better document. And before we gazette it, before we legislate it, it is important that we get your viewpoints, your inputs, so that we are all together in this sector. I hope that the audience that is here today is the audience that operates in the event technical production audiovisual sector, so that we can be able to get the viewpoints of those people from that sector. We plead with you, colleagues, that you restrict yourself to this document. We are not from the Department of Sports, Arts and Culture, neither from Department of Trade and Industry and Competition. We are all individuals and associations from the private sector that seek to regulate this industry. And so we expect from you to make contributions to this document. And please don't ask us about how we can assist you in getting funding or sponsorship of that sort. That's outside our turf. We won't be able to assist you. The Event Technical Production Services Transformation Forum was established in 2011 through the facilitation of the Department of Trade and Industry, and its purpose was basically to transform the industry so that it can be guided by the B-BBEE policy. As you are aware, that since our democracy in 1994, our society remains characterized by racial biased inequalities and racially biased incomes. And so the sector codes that we are developing is a mechanism through which we aim to address these inequalities and therefore mobilize the energies of the South African society so that they can contribute towards a sustained economic growth. The reason why we saw it necessary for this forum to create the sector codes was, of course, a little research that we did that pointed out to a number of challenges, one of which was that there were very few, or actually there were no entrants coming from the black society into our sector. The white entities were dominating this sector, and of course there's a lot of fronting. And the main thing, of course, is that the entire sector is not regulated. As you are aware, government today is the biggest procurer of services. And if there's no regulation in how these services are procured, it obviously will accelerate the continued inequalities and imbalances that currently exist. Our vision is to have a very prosperous event technical production services industry that is globally competitive, inclusive, and highly skilled. Our objectives, of course, is to define the scope, the principles, and the framework in which this industry will be transformed. And of course, as I've already mentioned, is that we want to increase the number of black people that own and control the assets in this sector. The people who formed the forum, which is basically made of associations, are the following people. EXA, which is short for Exhibitions and Events Association of Southern Africa. And today from EXA, we are represented by Ms. Leanne Alder. Please welcome her. We also have SACI, short for South African Association for the Conference Industry. And here representing SACI is our colleague, Mr. Clinton de Kock. SAMPA, short for South African Music Promoters Association, and the president of SAMPA is here, Mr. Chana Mpololo. Please welcome Chana Mpololo. This forum, one of its founding members and the person who basically ignited the desire for us to work and regulate this industry was Sarah, who approached the parliament to address it on these inequalities. And the person from SARA, South African Roadies Association, who did that was Mr. Feridi Nyatela. Please welcome him. From IPO, it's the Independent Producers Association, and based here in Cape Town, we've got Mr. Quentin Frederick. Please welcome Quentin. Of course, there are a number of our colleagues who are unable to attend here, and from IFIA, short for the International Festival and Events Association, it's represented by Ms. Janet Landy. She's not here and definitely watching this live broadcast. Also, from TUMSA, Trade Union for Musicians of South Africa, Mr. Gabriel Leroux is unable to be with us today. And also from SAIC, South African Events Council, and also another council called CIPA, called Council of Event Professionals Africa, both represented by Ms. Sue Gannon. I didn't introduce myself. Mine is Opa Salimani. I'm also from SAMPA, South African Music Promoters Association. I now want to give this opportunity to my Deputy President, Mr. Kevin Jones, who is from SACIA. SACIA short for Southern African Communication Industries Association, and SACIA represented here today by Mr. Kevin Jones. Please welcome him on stage. Thank you.
So good morning, everybody. I thought Opar was going to introduce everybody else and leave me out in the cold. So I kind of scraped in as the last person to be introduced. I think Opar made it clear, over the last few years, individuals from these different associations, all of us active in the events and audiovisual sector, have put aside our differences to work on the development of an industry-specific BEE scorecard for our sector. Some of these organizations represent individuals and some of them represent companies. Some of them think the proposals that we've put forward so far go too far, and others believe that they don't go far enough. But despite those differences, and we've had some very fierce battles between us over the last 10 years, we've finally agreed on a document that we all feel comfortable with. We've sent it out to our stakeholders for comment and input. We've processed the inputs that we've received so far, so the version of the document that you have in front of you is an amended version that's been updated from our previous industry engagements. And we believe that with your input, we've been able to collectively develop a draft scorecard that will really serve our sector and make a difference to the people working in it. The next step in the process is that the document is scheduled to be published in the Government Gazette in the very near future. We were hoping that it would be published in the Gazette in the last week. Unfortunately, that didn't happen, but it is imminent. And it'll then be open for a period of 3 months, and at the end of that 3-month period, we'll again collate inputs that have been received from our public engagement forums. We'll update the document. There'll be a final version that is published in the Government Gazette, and that document will then become law, and the elements that are embedded within it will be binding on all employers that are working in the events, technical and production services sector. So this is, I think, our second presentation live in Cape Town. We're embarking on a roadshow that will take in the rest of the country. We've had several virtual webinars, and as I said, people have provided us with their feedback. The current draft is far from perfect, and there are several things that we have not addressed. For example, we've specifically, and it has been raised recently, we haven't addressed the issue of special purpose commercial vehicles often used in the film and audiovisual industry to mitigate risk and to ring fence income and expenditure. These are organizations that are established for a specific purpose. They exist for the duration of that particular purpose, and once that purpose has been achieved, they are dissolved. It's not probably that much of an issue outside of the film and television industry, but it is a model that works in the events industry in Europe, and going forward it's very likely that it'll be one of the things that becomes popular in South Africa. We also need to figure out how we can develop a fund that will drive this transformation process and ensure that black-owned businesses are able to access the funds they need to grow their business and to truly transform the sector. One of the questions I've been asked since we started our public engagements, and particularly since we started this rollout in a post-COVID world, is why we need a scorecard. And particularly now when the events and the audiovisual industry have been completely decimated by the impact of the COVID pandemic. And the answer is provided by a quote from the Minister of Sport, Arts and Culture, our host today, even if he's not here, represented by Colin. And he described how one of the challenges facing the department is the disintegrated nature of what people are doing, because they come from different genres, different race groups. People actually have not been good at cooperating and collaborating with each other. And he described how social cohesion and economic transformation sat at the heart of the Arts and Culture Ministry. And he went on to describe how nation building and social cohesion would help redress the imbalances of the past and help us ensure that people who were historically excluded from the economy also, through this piece of legislation, find a fair share of participation. These comments were reinforced by President Ramaphosa, who, in presenting the South African Economic Reconstruction and Recovery Plan at the beginning of the COVID pandemic, described how the pandemic itself presented an opportunity to reset the South African economy. It is an opportunity to build a new inclusive economy that benefits all South Africans, he said, and he positioned transformation and black economic empowerment high on the government's economic agenda. So much of the work that we've done, I think Opal made it clear, this process started back in 2011, and so we've now been in this process for 11 years. But a lot of the work that has led to the current draft document is work that was completed during this COVID pandemic. And it was really because of government's commitment to use the pandemic as a stimulus for economic and racial transformation that has come about. Pardon me. Since the removal of the state of national disaster, you'll have heard several politicians talk about build back better. It became a bit of a joke on national television. Everybody from the president down was using the same phraseology. But the choice is clear in the way that we do build back better. We can either embrace the generic code of good practice and drive transformation using the existing legislation, or we can develop our own industry scorecard that's specific to our needs. And in exploring whether we should develop our own scorecard or whether we should use the generic scorecard, I'd suggest that the events and the audiovisual industry is unique. Our companies tend to be much smaller. The people that work in those organizations tend to have very specialist skills. We make extensive use of the freelance community. And essentially we do so as our needs dictate, and because of that our revenues and our income and our expenses fluctuate wildly. And essentially what that adds up to is a situation in which if we apply the generic scorecard, we find that it's built for regular organizations that have substantial income and a consistent revenue stream, and in the events and audiovisual industry that simply doesn't apply. So the generic scorecard is a rudimentary tool because it's designed to be used across multiple industry sectors, and what we're trying to do is to build a tool that works specifically for our sector. Using the generic scorecard is a bit like using a pipe wrench to remove a nut from a bolt. You're falling asleep. No. Okay. Yeah, it's like using a pipe wrench to remove a nut from a bolt. It'll work. You know, it's a tool that will work. But a spanner is a far more appropriate tool. And what we're proposing is to cast a bespoke spanner that allows us to implement a transformation agenda within our industry sector that is specific to our needs, but we need for this bespoke spanner to be developed with your needs and with your inputs. The proposed scorecard covers a variety of event formats, including sport, entertainment, and business events. It includes exhibitions, incentive tours, film, television productions, audio-visual productions. It even includes events that are hosted in a virtual online space. So this experience that we're having now would classify as an online event. It's very broad in the activities that it covers. It cuts across several other industry sectors. And we are aware that in its breadth, there may be companies who are confused about where they fall. Does an event venue, for example, does that fall under the Tourism Charter Council or the Tourism Sector Code? Does a commercials producer fall under the Marketing, Advertising and Advertising Sector Code? Does a company hosting a virtual event fall under the ICT Sector Code? And I'm very pleased that Lisa's here. This is a conversation that we had with Westgrow during our last engagements. But our guideline response is simple. The Charter applies to any organisation that generates more than 50% of its revenue from the events and the audiovisual sector. We've spoken to the Tourism Charter Council, and we seem to be in agreement with them. So if you are an event venue that offers accommodation to event delegates, and 50% or more of your revenue comes from the provision of accommodation, then you would fall under the tourism codes. But if 50% of your revenue or more falls into the events sector, then you would fall into this charter that we are developing. And exactly the same applies to commercial producers that produce audiovisual content that is specific to the advertising and marketing sector. So if that's their primary market, they would still fall under the MAC sector code. But if they're producing entertainment content for radio and television broadcast, or for distribution on social media platforms or on a streaming platform, then they would be covered by this particular charter code. So yeah, I suppose a good example would be an IT company. So if you're an IT company that provides the technology, that sells the technology that is used for a virtual streaming event, then you would fall under the ICT code. But if you are a user of that same technology, then you would fall under the ITP, what are we called? Event Technical Production Services Industry. I never do it fast. So then this is the code that would apply. In August last year, the National Film and Video Foundation released their 2021 Economic Assessment Study. And it was a survey that looked at the transformation in the audiovisual sector, and they concluded that overall there are low levels of inclusion and slow transformation in the audiovisual sector. This is a particular challenge. They identified at higher skill levels within the industry where there has been very limited transformation. They recognized that the audiovisual sector has made steady progress on the transformation front in terms of employment and management aspects, but there's been limited progress on the ownership aspect, and their report specifically highlighted the lack of self-sufficient and sustainable black-owned business enterprises. It also described how beyond the public sector, black filmmakers and producers often find it very difficult to raise capital or access the funding that they require in order to build a sustainable business. So I don't know if there are any filmmakers in the audience, but if there are, when it comes up for question time, perhaps that's an opportunity for you to comment. Similar research exists in the events industry, where we find high barriers to entry for venues and technical production companies because of the high capital cost involved. There are almost no barriers to entry for event organisers who don't require a high capital investment, but events is a high-risk business, and perhaps because it's a high-risk business, we found that there are many young people, black people, entering the industry, but a very high failure rate. So they get all excited, they pump their limited resources into building an organization, and then 6 months later, they find themselves in a situation where they're eating baked beans and not able to run the bath at night because the water is cold. Black-owned technical production companies find it really difficult to raise capital and access private funding, and there's been a limited opportunity for training and skills development, particularly training relating to the business skills that are required for individuals wanting to explore a future in business ownership or management. In order to address those issues, we've taken a long look at the core elements of the BEE scorecard, and we've radically increased the transformation targets for ownership, management control, and skills development. We've also increased the number of points needed to achieve the various BEE levels. So while there are more points available in each category, the targets are also raised. I'm just going to share a few examples of how the proposed scorecard deviates from the generic scorecard, and a good place to start is with the ownership targets. In this instance, the target for exercisable voting rights in an entity held by black people is increased from 25% plus 1 voting share to 40%. Our objective here is to incentivize organizations to increase black participation in industry boards, but the reward for the higher target is increased from 4 weighting points to 10 weighting points. Have no idea what's going on there. We've also increased the targets for the economic interest in which black people are entitled from 25% in the generic scorecard to 40% in the ETPSI scorecard, again with a corresponding increase in the weighting points that accrue. We've proposed a significant increase in the targets related to the economic interest of black persons in shared ownership schemes and cooperatives, raising the target from 4% to 20%, so that we can encourage black people to embrace empowerment structures and to encourage companies to sell shares to their employees. We're looking for greater equity participation from staff and surrounding communities. One of the big concerns identified in the research carried out by the NFVF revolved around the failure of black employees to progress into middle management. They enter an organization and then they get stuck there. And so we've proposed a target to address this bottleneck and create an opportunity for junior employees to progress in their career. This target does not exist in the generic scorecard and is introduced in response to the specific challenges that exist in the film and events industry. We've also doubled targets for supplier and enterprise development, encouraging companies not only to create employment opportunities for their own staff, but also to create a black-owned supply chain that can feed into their business. We've increased the target allocated to training and skills development, specifically because we want to encourage on-the-job training, mentorship, and work-integrated learning, as well as more formal education that leads to the award of a qualification or a professional designation. And then finally, we've increased targets for socio-economic development because we believe that the events industry in particular has the potential to offer employment opportunities that feed into a much broader community. We've often seen the development of micro-enterprises that can contribute to the events and audiovisual sector, perhaps with the production of local craft products or other activities such as that. So we've tried to take a collaborative approach that takes into account other government initiatives. For example, SACWA has registered several professional designations in both the film and events industry, and we want to encourage people working in those sectors to earn a professional designation that recognizes their skill and their knowledge and their competence. We're aware that there are funding initiatives delivered through the DTIC Film Fund We want to ensure that the work that we've been doing in the development of a scorecard supports their transformation objectives, but also that their funding policies support our objectives, particularly relating to training and skills development. We're aware that the National Convention Bureau offers programs that provide financial support to events or event organisers hosting events in rural communities. And again, we want to ensure that we work with the Convention Bureau's funding policy to ensure that they're aligned with our transformation agenda and vice versa. Ideally, what we are looking for is for all organs of state to be aligned in the 5 pillars of transformation, so that by working together, we can fast-track black economic empowerment in our country and create an environment that brings economic prosperity to everybody. But this vision, as grand as it is not easy to achieve. So while we've published our draft scorecard, and it is certainly a work in progress, this will be amended based on your feedback. This is your opportunity to collaborate in the development of an industry-specific scorecard that promotes a transformation agenda without throttling the economic recovery of the sector as we emerge from this COVID pandemic. We recognise that our sector has been devastated by the restrictions imposed upon us over the last 2 years. And while we're aware that many companies in the event sector have scaled down substantially, to the point that they now exist only as a name on a letterhead or a sign on the outside of an empty building. It truly has been horrific. At the same time, we've seen many of our experienced technicians leave the country. More than 30% of our AV technical crew are now working in the Middle East, in Qatar, in the UAE, in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Technical crew that have made that move and are now working in the Middle East are working on interesting and groundbreaking projects that look great on a CV. They're earning hard currency in a tax-free environment, and we've no idea whether those people, having left, will ever come back. We would like to think that they will. But unless we're able to create commercial opportunities within our own industry sector that make it attractive for those people to return, the people that have left will stay away and the brain drain will continue. In that, our ability to host world-class events will evaporate, our ability to create world-class audio-visual productions will just disappear. Training is obviously part of the solution, but there's a shortage of young people entering the industry, and at a time when we need more competent people, there are less people available. So I was having a conversation earlier in the week with a colleague who works in the music industry. I won't tell you who it is, but he was commenting on the fact that so many of our event techs are now working in the Middle East, and he said, we've, as an industry sector, we've been decimated by 871 days of COVID restrictions. Our balance sheets, he said, are in disarray. 40% of people previously working in the event sector have moved on. It's hard to sell off equipment and infrastructure when the bailiff is knocking on your door. This is a reality that we all need to accept. The film industry is in a very similar situation. The British Film Institute published a skills survey back in June of this year, and they were celebrating the British production boom. The film industry in Britain and Western Europe is, it's a great place to be working at the moment. But they pointed to a looming crisis in their sector, and they suggested, the report suggested, that there was a shortage of as many as 40,000 workers in the film industry that will have arisen by 2025, with shooting schedules in the UK already affected. Now, that skills shortage in the UK is addressed in part by training programs that are taking place in the UK. But in the short term, they are actively recruiting South African crew, and again, the question is whether those crew members will ever return to South Africa even if we build a stronger industry in this sector. So what we're looking at is an environment in which we're facing real economic challenges, and we desperately need to focus on reviving the sector in order to create a sustainable future. At the same time, we need to address historic inequality and create economic opportunity for black people. We need to promote training and skills development as a tool for economic recovery. We need to accelerate transformation at higher skill levels by creating structured career paths. We need to encourage cooperation and collaboration between established, primarily white-owned businesses and the emerging black-owned businesses that can feed in, so that we can create that environment of cooperation and collaboration and wealth building. And we need to create opportunities for black-owned businesses to access funding for CapEx and business development, because without that funding, your own growth will be thwarted. This isn't just a tick box exercise in which we pay lip service to the principles of public participation. The scorecard will impact everybody in our sector, so that whether you are a supplier or a supporter of BEE or not is completely irrelevant. You can either participate in the development of a bespoke scorecard or not. You know, we can go back to using the generic scorecard if everybody thinks that's what we should be doing, but it really will adversely impact the growth of the marketplace. So the choice is yours. You can either participate in the development of a new scorecard, or you can stick with the consequences of the old one. If you'd like more information, you have copies of the scorecard here. We're going to be running a series of events around the country. The locations and the dates are up on the screen now, but we're going to be speaking to the events and audiovisual sector in every province between now and the end of, I think, the end of February. I will, you know, I'm glad that you're here. If you want more information, if you want to listen to this again, there will be a recording available on YouTube. You know, we're marketing this aggressively. We're encouraging people to provide feedback. So I look forward to hearing from you. We, as a collective, look forward to hearing from you. And this now is your opportunity. I saw lots of people making notes, so I'm going to sit down, but I want to encourage you to ask questions and engage with us, so that by working together, we can create a document that is truly kind of a collaborative project. Thank you.
Thank you so much to Kevin for that detail. Before I think I open the floor for discussion. Before I open the floor for discussion, I'm just going to call Leanne, who's going to talk about the procurement and the amendments that have been made under the procurement after these consultations. Over to you, Leanne.
Talk about being put on the spot. Okay, welcome everybody. It's lovely to see you here. Awesome turnout, and what's really encouraging is to see so many youth. And in terms of the procurement change that we made to the scorecard, what had happened is when we did our initial rounds, we came across certain situations and examples. So we made an adjustment, especially to the procurement section. Many of our questions were asked to us was, how do us as youth or smaller companies have the same opportunity to grow, to develop, and to become a player in the industry? And one of those ways is by a larger company, a 50 mil over company, getting a tender from government. They cannot do that by themselves. They need specialized skills of individuals. So we have upped the scores by 1 point per grouping to utilize smaller black-owned entities with specific skill That way you will get the recognition, you will get the work experience that will go on your CV as a project, and you will also be given an opportunity to grow and to learn from people who've been around the industry for years and years. So we see it as a twofold experience, that you get work, which will in turn provide you with an income, as well as grow yourself with experience. So that is why we increased that score from the initial scorecard that we presented in July when we did our first round of presentations. So if you've got any questions around that, or you'd like to consult with anybody, anyone on the forum, please feel free to. But I just thought that I would explain that to you so you had a deeper understanding. Thanks very much.
Thank you so much, Leanne. Quickly, I just wanted to quickly say, usually when we speak about B-BBEE, it seems like it's a foreign language because it's too technical for an everyday use in the office. I'm from the B-BBEE professional body, so I understand the technicalities of understanding, or maybe the complexity of understanding the simple terms of what does it mean for me, what does it mean for my business. And I just made a summary of the notes. I just want to talk about the things that Kevin said, but in a simpler format, because Kevin was talking about the complexity of putting together the codes, but what does it mean for you and your business to be able to understand why we need the codes? For example, if we're talking about the generic scorecard, a generic scorecard will be a scorecard that is used by big businesses. I mean, even your banks don't use a generic scorecard. Even your accounting firms don't use a generic scorecard. They don't use those scorecards because they know they've got a specific need. And Kevin spoke about professional designations. I'm going to use the financial sector, which is your accounting firms. So we're very familiar with accounting firms. They use their specific, and they focus on what they call the professional designations. You see the CAs qualifying as chartered accountants. That is a professional designation. And you see when there's an advert to say we want a qualified chartered accountant, they are compliant with their sector codes, which is the financial sector codes. And that way, they are improving their sector. I know there will be technicalities of there's less inclusion of black a chartered accountant. I'm using it as an example to say, for you to regulate your sector, we need to have this. How often do you see an artist being developed to start a business? And you see an advert presented by the government to say we've got a funding opening, and when you look at the checklist, you don't have half of the things that they're looking for. They want you to present an affidavit. Who will give you an affidavit if you are not compliant? And who's regulating it? And if we're going to use a generic scorecard, I go back to the generic scorecard again. If we're going to use a generic scorecard, then it means you are measured against the law firms that don't have a scorecard. You are measured against any other business that is highly regulated by any other sectors, by other regulations, except for this specific one. And Kevin also spoke about the MEC codes. The MEC codes will be your media and advertising codes. And those codes are specific to that sector. So it's important also to have our own so that we can be able to enter into those adverts that are giving us funding, adverts that are saying we want to do a business, but we want somebody who's compliant. And we have like 3 types of businesses that qualify for B-BBEE measurement when you submit for a tender. We've got the EME, which are small businesses. That could be 5 people that you have. You're making enough money, but you don't have enough people. You don't have more than 50 people to be able to submit for a tender. But you're a small business. You need an opportunity. And this way, with the sector codes, we will give opportunities through that. You just need an affidavit with the commissioner to say, I'm a small business. I've got 50% or 71% of black ownership, and then we get the codes. And then I spoke about professional designation. Now we talk about skills. How often do you hear of funding of people that are going to AFDA, that are doing all the technical stuff, that are given bursaries? In other sectors, I mean, this specific, we need to pay for people to complete their qualifications. Now, the generic scorecard was amended in 2019 to say every business, for it to be compliant, they need to pay for people's bursaries. And that way we're going to hit the mark and train and teach and develop our very own. We know that the skills comes from the Skills Development Act, and the Act says we need to prioritize designated people. And designated people are your black people, the black youth, the people living with disabilities. They say they're not people living with disabilities, but people with disabilities, and people in rural areas. So if we've got the specific codes, we will be able to fund. We will be forced to fund people to complete degrees, to complete qualifications in structured universities. And therefore, we're going to up and help. If you're helping one person from a rural area, that person is going to help 10, 15 other people in their family. So I spoke about a new entrance. The entrants will be those that we are giving an opportunity. And I think the supply development that Leanne spoke about is a very powerful element in the scorecard. I'm saying it's a powerful element because it has two things. We've got supplier and enterprise. The supplier says, if you are my supplier, if I'm a business and you are my supplier, and I can see you struggling, I need to offer you certain things so that you can also develop. I can give you money, I can give you an interest-free loan, I can give you some time so that you are able to up your business, to be able to compete with your fellow other businesses. So I think that is a powerful element in the scorecard that we mostly neglect, because we look at ownership. Ownership, when the scorecard says, if you are 51% black, you qualify as a B-BBEE level 1. But if you look at the people that are not 51%, but are the ones that are submitting the tenders because they've got all the documents, they are verified, they've got all the funds, they are compliant with any other laws, but we are going to get an opportunity through the new entrance element. I spoke about funding. I'm not going to touch most about it because we spoke about it, how it's going to afford us that, that opportunity to participate. And also, lastly, I want to say, OPA indicated that the codes will be gazetted for 3 months. I encourage you to please go through the codes. If you look at the ownership specifically, they have included, under management control, they have included promotions, which is a powerful thing as well, to say, if you are a well-established business that is verified, verified means is you've gone through all the steps to be able to get that B-BBEE certificate. If you are able to move people from one level to another, then we are going to get black people in the management level. And if we've got black people in the management level, they will be able to speak up for other people. I cannot be sitting at the table and not speak up for my people, because you will understand what the struggles are. So that's what I think the codes, these specific codes, are addressing that line to say, if you've got black people, but they are sitting on the middle management and you're not doing anything about it, how are we going to get people to talk about for us? We know what apartheid has done for us. Who's going to talk for us if we don't have that seat? So if you look at the management control, which is the second element, it speaks to that element to say, these people will be able to talk for us because they understand our struggles. So I was saying that the Gazette is up for 3 months. Please have a look at that. I spoke about ownership, I spoke about the management control, supply enterprise development, which is your procurement. Skills development is also a big item there, where we talk about learnerships, where we talk about bursaries, professional designations. I mean, if I say to you, Ellen, after you played us a nice song, to say, go and study. Don't go and study music because music is your talent, but go and study business behind that, so that you are able to submit for yourself, and this will give you that opportunity. So I'm saying go read through it, understand what it means, have a business head in mind. Don't have a personal, I want to get that funding now. Have a business in mind to say, should I have a business? This will give me an opportunity to also compete with other fellow competitors for me to get an opportunity and get funding. And I will be able to bring in other people in. And Opa spoke about transformation. We know what transformation is. We know everybody speaks of transformation, but this is a detailing for our sector. I go back to the generic code. The generic code are saying if you are compliant with employment equity says you need to have different people at different management levels. We struggle to find white people in the unskilled level. What are we doing about it? Because we need to also bring them in the unskilled, but we also need to take our black people in the skilled environment. But we have the most qualified professionals. What are we doing with them? The codes will help us with that. Happy to take questions, and we also have different acts that support this act. Different acts will be your employment equity, skills development, the company acts, and other acts that makes us to qualify. We know we have to be, the SARS has to be there. We know we have other aspects, but for us to win, we need to start here. Happy to take questions. Also, okay, let me also say the protocol of questions. I'm going to take 3 questions and then give the panel a chance to respond, take another 3 questions so that we can move. And then there are the 2 mics. If you are going to talk, you can use either of the mics. I'm going to start with you, lady, and then come to you, and then I'll come to you. Thank you.
Hi, Busi. I really have short questions because I'm still absorbing the information. My name is Ubulelo Base, and you made mention of the 3 business models that are measured against, or rather the BEE is measured up against, in order for institutions to be able to access the opportunities that you make mention of. So you made mention of the EME. Is it? It's EME. I just wanted to establish if there are any other types of companies that, you know, against which you would measure these 3 companies. And then you also made mention of the mandate of the Skills Development Act, right? And I wanted to measure that against the corporate social investment sector. So I just would like for you to please elaborate on that. You made mention of the element of training, teaching, and development. The question is, does corporate South Africa understand that they have this kind of mandate? And how do we go about, as individuals and as collectives and as the entities that we are in this space, to engage corporate South Africa in understanding the Skills Development Act? Because there seems to be a notion that there is no responsibility that is expected from them. So if any of the panelists could just elaborate on that. Thank you so much.
Thank you. You can go. Yeah. 3. Yeah.
Hello, my name is Batilu Kwadu. For me, when we are establishing this document, I'm seeing it as a barrier of entry to the market for people who are like me, who are a marginalized group, because this information is overwhelming in a way that when you are submitting these documents so that you could access these goals you are talking about, it's going to be so hard because there are going to be a lot of rejections because there will be unclearance in terms of some things that need to be submitted in order for the submissions to be accepted. But my question is, okay, you have come up with this document. What are the physical work you have done without you have drafted this document that we can tell that you have done to the community or giving back to the community?
The third one. Yeah.
Thank you. Lisa from West Grove Film and Media Unit. I've got a whole lot of questions here, so I'll try to sum it up in one go. But if we're referring to regulating the industry by professional designations, my question is how? How do you plan on implementing this? Because, you know, we have individuals that have got 30 years experience that are earning a lot of money against students that are coming out of university. The 30-year-olds, they don't have qualifications in full. The newbies, they've got degrees or MAs or whatever. So my question is, you need to do a recognition of prior learning, which costs money. So for example, me, which I did work in the industry to now become a designated producer, but I've been earning big bucks for the last 15 years. How are you going to get me to do that? And does the industry actually recognize these designations? For me, I need to understand how you're going to get those producers, the businesses, to recognize this and how you're going to regulate it. Because first of all, the industry, yes, we've got the IPO sitting here and stuff like that, that's looking out for the betterment of the industry, but there is nothing actually binding businesses to do so, or the crew to do so. So for me, I'm not against it. I think it's a very good idea, but for me, there's no point in having these scorecards when there's no actual clear way or path to implement it. So for me, I got a big question on how. We've been talking about these things for years, but how? So that's just me. And yes, and my thing is also the producers, we've got there's certain film businesses that this does impact because of incentives, but we also got those companies, for example, like reality TV series and commercials and stuff, which doesn't really impact. So how do we get those companies to support the growth and the change and the transformation? Because we've been struggling in the Western Cape specifically for years. So that's just me. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think that we're going to ask the gentleman to please repeat the question, and then we're going to give the panel a chance to respond.
Okay. So what I was saying actually, this document is a barrier of entry to the market for the community because this document, there is a lot that is required by it in order to the submissions to be accepted. So then my question was, what is the physical work you have done without the document that you have drafted that you could say, we have given back to the community? This is the work that we have done. So what I'm saying actually, are you waiting for this document in order for this department to work? Because needs you are stating needs, but needs without a certification, it means senseless that we are talking about needs, but we can't satisfy them. We need to put actions. We have spoken so many times, but what have we done about that? Yes, there have been changes, but they are not enough, because the issue is we are the mixed economy, yes, but what have we done?
Thank you. Yeah, you can go. Yeah.
Can I answer the first question, and then I'll give China that question, and then I want to give myself and Opa the opportunity to answer Lisa's question, because Opa and I were talking about this issue earlier on. So I'm going to stand, because as you can see, I'm 5'2". Okay.
You have to be very smart. That's my sister.
She's my sister too. Don't worry. So you raise a very important issue around whether corporate South Africa understand its mandate and its political, social, and economic responsibility in terms of skills development. Now, the reality is that at the moment, as we speak, in the National Skills Fund, there is an accumulated levy of almost 3 to 4 billion of unspent skills development levies, which is an indication that the skills development levy that corporate South Africa pays over to the Department of Labour in terms of the Mandated Skills Development Act is not being spent by corporate South Africa, nor is corporate South Africa accessing the National Skills Fund to drive skills development and transformation. And so the question you ask is a very pertinent question, because what are the reasons for corporate South Africa not accessing this vast pool of money to drive skills development and by implication transformation? And there are two reasons. One is that there is simply not the will by corporate South Africa to engage with the specific mandatory processes around skills development for the vast majority of our people and the workforce. And two, there is an onerous burden of compliance and reporting to access that skills development funds. And that has acted as an impediment for corporate South Africa to actually implement skills development programs. So it's a catch-22 situation. On the one hand, you have the regulatory burden that government has put in place in terms of compliance, reporting, and cost. Because it's not worth a company's while to implement a skills development program if the cost of reporting outweighs the benefit of investment in the skills development or career development path of a particular employer, employee, or cohort of employees. So that's my response to your question, because it's an issue that we have been grappling with for years in South Africa. And it seems as if there is no resolution in sight, because the two major titans in that game is government and corporate South Africa. The rest of us are caught in the middle as small, medium, and micro enterprises. So I hope that answers your question in respect of that issue. On the question of, can I just answer Lisa's question, China, if you don't mind, and then I'll hand over to China and to Opa. Lisa, the question of professional designation is a universal issue. It's been on the cards. SACIA has entered into agreements with a number of industry bodies, whether it's the South African Guild of Actors, the Guild of Cinematographers, the IPO. We all have MOUs with SACIA to implement this professional designation process, precisely for the reason that you yourself mentioned, right? Is that you have people who've been in this industry for 30 years, who are earning top dollar, who've become comfortable in the space that they occupy, because based on their level of expertise and experience, they continually work on these major international productions. So there's been no incentive for them to formalize their training and their experience in any quantifiable way. The reality, though, is that the landscape is changing. We've seen increasingly with the advent of people like Netflix, Showmax, Canal Plus, and now Amazon, that these international agencies are requiring documentary evidence of your skills and your competence before they will book you on a job. And that's been my experience recently on a few Netflix productions that we've been commissioned on, where we've had to forward the qualifications of the crew to the administrative headquarters of Netflix and Showmax and Amazon before these people will be considered for placement on those productions. And there are two reasons for that. One is the question of risk mitigation in terms of the competency, that the professional designation competency indicates that this person understands the scope and the area of responsibility of their work, but at the same time that they are qualified to mitigate the risk in that respect because they have the qualifications that demonstrate their understanding of both the regulatory and the operational environment on those productions. And that's increasingly becoming an issue. So there's the major incentive there for us to get these professional designations in place, particularly for those industry members who've been working for so long but who've never taken the time. And the reality is that there's never the time for people to actually sit and spend a few months working on the theory of a particular portfolio of evidence that they then submit in accordance with their actual experience. And so that landscape is changing quite quickly, and the demand for that professional competency to be attained is becoming increasingly urgent from all the streamers that are coming to South Africa. The question on the recognition of prior learning is that recognition of prior learning is not an easy process. It requires a huge amount of time and energy to be invested, and it also requires a huge discipline and commitment from the people actually applying through the RPL process for a particular qualification. And in that respect, I think we need to recognize that we need the buy-in of the various tertiary institutions, but we also need investment from the Mixita to drive that particular process. And that in itself is another bureaucratic nightmare that we're all too familiar with, because again, it's that onerous bureaucracy and reporting obligation that becomes an impediment and a disincentive to getting the people the exact professional qualification designation that they actually require to operate in the marketplace. So I'm going to hand over to Opa and to China and then to Opa. Thank you.
Thanks, Quentin. I think if I get the question correctly, you are asking the foreign members, what have they done in the community besides the document? Is that correct? In relation to what is in the document. I'm not too sure, but my take would be, let's begin to understand why we're here. If we're listening to the chairperson's opening remarks, among the things that he mentioned, he made a comment that says, please, we are not Department of Sports, Arts and Culture, neither Department of Trade and Industry and Competition. He was not making those comments in trying to shut down anyone, but he's bringing that on the background of understanding the frustrations and the challenges that the creatives always go through without having any place to raise their voices. So when such platforms comes in, they begin to voice all those kind of things, even if they are not necessarily relevant. But on the other hand, he did indicate that you have an opportunity to engage any individual after the formal session in whatever issues that you have, if that person is based in your space. That's one part. The second part, because you need to understand this whole clearly. When this process started, because I think the second question, the question is also aligned to the lady that raised, people have been talking all along. When this process started, The president of SARA, South African Road Association, Mr. Freddie Nyatel, he was raising a frustration of having an institution that develops black kids in particular, who were not given any opportunity. They are being trained, qualified, and in fact, you'll be surprised to know that the bulk of work SARA members get, they get them overseas than in this country. And that can't be correct. Now, they cannot come to my company and demand work because I decide who I want to employ. But they have all the rights to any work that is government funded because that's taxpayers' money, which they are also part of. And that is how this process started. So in essence, Mklegas was saying, you have an opportunity to engage. Since we're coming from different organizations, each organization has got a role that they are doing, both the organization and its own members in different communities. But this particular forum, it's not their mandate. Their mandate is to craft this thing into a law. Once it's done, after that, there will be another institution that will come out which will deal with the enforcement of whatever law that has been adopted. I'm not sure if you're in Kabul. Are we together? We can still engage. So that's basically the nature of it. Because once we start getting involved in things that don't necessarily speak to our task and mandate, we're going to end up losing the focus of what we're supposed to be doing. Ours is to make sure that there's law. As you could hear, we're already in the process of gazetting the thing. Once that is done and it's been adopted, everybody else will have to follow that. But in coming to what happened to engagement with communities, that we can do it with you, separated from this platform. Sharp. Sharp.
Thanks, China, for the information. I don't think his question was irrelevant as such. Yes, it's not, but at the same time, China is right. This question, it's outside our mandate. We here, as I mentioned earlier, to develop these sector codes, and we're here to seek your input to assist us in shaping it the way we want to see the final document to be. Fortunately for you, the people who you should be asking this question directly to are here. DSEC, the Department of Sports, Arts and Culture. They will be able to give you the answers. And Colin introduced himself here. Later, before we close this session, I'll ask him to address your question. There were other questions relating to the implementation and how we're going to get this regulated. And also, how does this document help transform the sector? I don't know if you want to attend to that, Kevin.
I'm going to move from behind in front of the speaker. So also just following up on Lisa's question. So number one, you spoke about regulation and imposing a regulated framework upon the market. And I think it's important to understand that what we're doing is actually developing legislation that will be imposed by national government that is specific to transformation and black economic empowerment. And we're establishing a framework that encourages, for example, training and skills development. So you mentioned professional bodies, and of course I run a professional body, which is one of the reasons that I raised the issue. But just to put it into perspective, what we're suggesting is that a company would need to apply a percentage of their total profit towards what would be defined as pivotal learning. So what is pivotal learning? Pivotal is an acronym that stands for professional, vocational, technical and academic learning. And so people will say, well, I'm going to spend money on training my staff. There needs to be a mechanism that allows government to determine whether the training that's provided is valid or not. You know, is it based on some kind of curriculum, or is it something that the employer just pulled out of their thumb? And the answer to that is that if training is registered to become part of a pivotal program, then it would qualify in terms of the spend, and if it's not aligned with that pivotal program, then it won't. So any program that is validated by SAQA, either a training program that leads to an academic or a technical qualification or a vocational qualification, or that leads to the award or maintenance of a professional designation, would fall into that pivotal spend. But other training that does not lead to either the award or maintenance of a professional designation or the award of a vocational, academic or technical qualification will not be included in an organisation's training spend. Does that? I know it's complex, but
Yeah, I'm just, I mean, I'm sitting here trying to like absorb everything you're saying, but at the same time, it's like realistically, like, because I'm just sitting here thinking you go to university with the qualification, right?
yes.
So I'm just like trying to go through the steps. So I'm at university, I just finished my MA, I've got a master's.
Yes.
So then I go work with a company, then that company's got to take on the onus of getting my professional designation in the industry once I've got some work experience. Is that what you're saying? Because if I've got an MA and I'm going into the industry, I don't have any experience in the industry, I'm new.
Right.
Right?
So every professional designation, every professional body that exists, so let's go back to using the chartered accountant as an example, because I don't think that there are any chartered accountants in the room. So in order to become a chartered accountant, you go to university and you do a bachelor's degree with honours in accounting. At the end of that process, you join a firm of auditors and you work under the supervision of an existing chartered accountant who provides career guidance and mentorship and work integrated learning opportunities. And at the end of, and you do that for 2 years, and at the end of that 2-year period, you write the board exam, and assuming that you pass the board exam, you are inducted as a member of the Institute of Chartered Accountants. And the same applies to lawyers and doctors and all sorts of other professions. So in theory, exactly the same would apply to somebody that wanted to earn a professional designation as a film producer, is that they would be assessed based on a review of their education, their work experience, their work ethic, and a portfolio of work that reflects on their competence during that 2-year period that they had been working under the supervision of a supervisor.
But what if you're not, because you're working on various projects during that 2 years? So then how do you manage that? Because I might be a producer, but I might have worked on 5 jobs in that 2 years.
Yeah, that's fine. You can get input from multiple supervisors.
But the process is that I'm going to have to then pay for that portfolio of evidence myself to get the recognition. So I'm going to go to university, spend all that money, then I'm going to spend more time on getting my...
So the RPL process is onerous, but it's not expensive.
But I still have to spend money getting that. So that's the process basically you're going to put forward to the industry. You've got to do your education, and then you've got to pay like for your board exam or whatever, or your RPL to get this professional designation. That's just what I'm trying to clarify.
So, Lisa, the reality in the film industry is unlike that of any other sector. We know that the film schools are churning out graduates who have no experience and who have huge levels of expectation when they come onto a production. And they then end up having to start at the bottom of the rung and work their way up over anything between 5 to 7 years to attain a level of HOD competency if they are committed and they're disciplined. Now, you're talking about a hypothetical situation in terms of the reality is that you can go to film school, you can qualify as a director, as an actor, as a writer, as a DOP, etc., but you still need practical on-the-job experience.
I'm not disputing that.
No. What I'm saying,
just trying to understand the process.
I'm saying that the process for most people in the film industry is that you still have to get that practical work experience, which if you want to equate it to, for example, the indentured term of an articled clerk, it equates to the same thing because you have to get that professional supervision and approval by your peers in order to be deemed competent at a particular level. Now, that's where the gap has been theoretically between graduating from a tertiary institution and then being able to enter the world of work with a measure of competency and earning ability, which becomes then a constraint. So it's a catch-22 situation, and it's something that we've been trying to address with the SA Film Academy, where we take graduates from film school, we put them on a 3-year mentorship program with the SA Film Academy, where they go from one production to another. On each production that they are on, they have to develop a portfolio of evidence. They get feedback from their HODs. It goes into the portfolio of evidence. It then is quantified against a SAQA registered film and television unit standard, normally at level 5. And at the end of that 3-year period, they can then go and join a crew agency as a bona fide crew member because they have both the theoretical and the practical competency to book themselves out into the commercial space. So that's been the way that we've tried to get around that anomaly in the sector. And we now have an alumni database of 496% of whom are black crew that started with us when I started the SA Film Academy in 2006, that are now working on international productions, who have been in the industry for the last 10, 12, 15 years, and who are now recognized as bona fide professionals. The gap there is that those 400 alumni, a negligible percentage of them have attained the level of HOD competency. And that's the critique from the National Film and Video Foundation 2021 Transformation Report, is that at the lower and middle level management in the film and television industry, you have a significant cohort of black professionals. Where there is a lack of representation of black professionals is at the level of HOD. And that's where we need to be looking at, and that's why we've set that target under skills development and representation of black people at senior and executive level, because that's where the deficit lies. And that's where the professional designation that we're discussing with SACIA for producers, but also with SAFA, comes in to actually plug that gap. And then the Academy for Creative Excellence, which we launched in 2020, where we're placing SAFA alumni under the supervision of international crew working on these international productions to get that competency and that recognition. But I don't think there's an easy fix to the RPL process. You're either going to go with it and make the sacrifice over those 2 years to get that RPL against that unit standard at SAQA level 7 or whatever, or you're just going to have to wing it for however long it takes.
Thank you, Quentin. I just want to add on that from the specific scorecard. So on skills development, what we've done is we've increased the skills development to 5%, that is of payroll monthly. So 5% of everybody's monthly payroll spend will have to go into skills development. And we've looked at that to bridge the gap between people just working and earning an income or growing and being developed and getting the RPL process. So there is provision in our document for growth and recognition of prior learning within the scorecard. I hope that addresses your question as well.
Yeah, just to add to what Leanne and Quentin have just said, if you remember, the generic scorecard focuses on 3 main elements, and there wasn't a supplier, enterprise development, as well as skills development. And the sectors, particularly the film industry sector that Quentin had referred to, would have people, black people, who would be working there for ages, and they would not be able to climb up the ladder, although they get the in-job service, but they would not get to the top of the level. Now, this scorecard is insisting that a percentage of their annual profit should go towards training of their personnel. And so if you have a professional qualification, the company or the entity has no option but to push you, because you have now got a designation and the in-service training job. There was also a question that I thought Kevin will address, perhaps he was interrupted, on how this document helped transform the industry. You will know, colleagues, that whatever we're doing here, if government is not going to come on board and assist us in achieving what we want to achieve here, it would not happen. These companies that the government procures the services from, for many, many years, long before our scorecard and other sector codes were in existence, the government had been working with them. They produced the generic scorecard, and they never implemented or regulated that scorecard. Hence, there's a need to transform. Once we've done the road shows in all the provinces and we've gotten your input onto the scorecard, the Minister of Sports, Arts and Culture will then appoint this forum into a council. And one of the major tasks of this council would be to receive the reports from these entities, to monitor those entities, and also to make normal adjustments on the scorecard as and when it's necessary to make it effective into our sector. And so by doing that, that would go a long way transforming this sector. So it is necessary that we get your input, we have our own scorecard for this sector, so that this sector is regulated and we can implement issues the way we want them implemented. Thank you.
Oh, you don't want to take the questions? You want?
I just wanted to touch on
okay.
the gentleman over there was talking about, because I think you raised an important issue.
Yeah, no, take questions.
Oh.
I note 3. 1, 2, 3. Yeah. Uncomfortable? Can I continue? Yeah. Oh, okay. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, panel, for that feedback. And I think I also want to add to say, this specific code, just to help you there, you get verified annually as a company, right? Annual verification, and annually you need to be compliant. What does that mean for you? It means annually, if they've trained you this year to attain your master's, next year and you want to do your professional body. And I think that's another thing that we need to understand. If training learning, qualification must come from you as a person. And if you want to do your professional designation, then the next year they need to fund you. And for you to maintain your professional designations, you need to go to continuous CPD, they called it the CPD, continuous professional development. And therefore you need to get, and I want to go back to the CA example. We have, the world has changed. The CA that was trained in 1988 when I was born is still relevant in the market to this day. You know why? Because they belong into a body that takes care of their changes. And therefore you keep relevant. You stay connected, you know what the updates are. If there's a new system for you to operate, you have that access. And that's what we are trying to do. And this document is saying to those that are not transformed, give us an opportunity to come in and you train us, because it's a requirement for you to be able to do business with government, which are the people that are giving you big bucks. For you to be operational, you need to get that certificate. I want to make an example. If you look at ABSA as a bank, you know, there's so many stuff about ABSA as a bank, about transformation and this. But it remains compliant into the B-BBEE. You know why? Because they know they want to do business with government. They need to get more people in. I'm a product of B-BBEE. I was part of the interns that are taken in. So what I'm saying is, it's a hope document. It cannot be perfect now, but we know the intentions. I'm going to take 3 more questions, and I'm going to start with the gentleman there. I know he raised his hand first, and I'm going to go with you, and I'm going to go with you, and then I'll take another round of questions.
Good day, everyone.
May you kindly stand so that we can see you?
Okay. I actually gonna come straight to the draft. 4.4, eligible as an exempted micro-enterprise. It's about the sworn affidavit for registering for BEE. So what I wanted to ask is, if a collective start a business and they register as an example as a non-profit company, and they need to register for BEE, but one within that collective does not have relatives, and the BEE requires that if you apply for a BEE, you must have someone that shares the same surname, so that if you apply for it, then his details, you need to give his details, and you basically don't have anyone. You don't have anyone. And then if you then you go to a sworn affidavit, you draft, you do the sworn affidavit, you go to the police station, the commissioner of oath sign it and all that stuff. You follow all the steps that they need you to do. And then it's also declined or rejected. So that means that organization or that company won't actually qualify for BEE. So that's what I want to understand. That's my question.
If I understand, we understood the question? If you have an NPO, okay, cool. Okay, you can go.
Oh, thank you. Oh, hey. My name is China, Junior China, so I don't want to say China next to you. We've been in the industry for many years. I've worked with the Cape Town Traditional Jazz for 25 years, and also train for skill development and all that. My thing is not about it's about the bill. The bill is super. But practically, that's what we want to see. And also for me, as we were saying, Mark said there's a lot of skills that people run away with the skills, and they are in Dubai, and also, yeah, some of my colleagues, they're also there, but I call them they're cowards because we train them here and then they run away to the side. But for that, I'm so happy to see Sarah, and I'm so happy to see Sampa, that they're still active. You know why? It's because there are people who have been opening the doors for our black people to be on stage, to be a sound management, how to be a stage manager, how to run the event. Because most of us, we thought that the event is just an event, we're making an event. No, there's a lot of things that are behind the event. So that's why when you talk about those scores and everything, I'm so happy because most of those companies that are giants are doing the big events. They always privatize the educational program. I was once being a part of that, being captured. I've been with ESP for many years, as Freddie and China and the others know. The Rashid Lombards and the others, I've been the vision behind. But through sake of now, this COVID, for me, in these 2 years, it shows us something that you can develop yourself, because now you've got skills, you've been all over the world. What I'm trying to say is, to our people, to our black people, events is not child's play. When you do events, you must know there's a lot of legally documents that you must sign, because those events are rated according to these different scales, high risk and there's lower risk events. And also on our event, make sure that you research people that are doing big events. Those people that are doing big events, they are reachable. But the thing is, we always look at those companies that are strong. Let's knock there and understand the event. The event industry is about the vision. What I'm trying to push more is about those institutes that are doing events production and all that, like the Damelin and the others. They're ripping off those kids. Because when you do event, it's a theory now, practical now. Because you won't understand the safety of the market that you're putting there. When the disaster management come and criticize you, we need to also put on these gazettes, those kind of things, because they always, when black men started to reach the bar, they're introducing new thing, which is now health and safety on any event. We don't have safety managers because it's not a bad thing. Now we need to make sure also when we said we want to do events on our own, you visualize the event. See it before you even go there. See the policemen standing there. See the security there standing on that side. So that's what I'm trying to say to our people. We can educate, we can do these kind of things, but our people look at event as a glamour. This is where I want to be. Now for us, it's just a bread, to put bread on top of a table. And the knowledge that we have, we need to share. That's why we keep on saying, each one, teach one. That was a strategy of Cape Town International Jazz Festival. I follow that man, Freddie Nyatela. I opened my own crew, which called China Crew, training people through that influences. And China Pololo with these events give me a floor to explore. Because if I can't get those exploration, I'm not going anywhere. That's what the main thing needed on the events. Those giants there, they keep that thing because they know that they've got China Jiha, they've got ABC. Who can go down and do their outreach programs as using them. So what I'm saying to our people, they have been afraid. He's been fighting this thing for many years. Sampa fight their position in order to be recognized as South African music promoters. For roadies, there are a lot of people, even today, that we can train, but through sake of taking those programs to the people. And also those organizations that are getting a lot of money from the government, they must be putting those things as compulsory that you want to see you doing the ABC, transfer the skill program that you, thank you very much.
Morning. My name is Banzi Tema. As young as I am, I've been in the field for more than 35 years. Firstly, I would like to commend the team for the draft. It's quite a commendable document. Mine is that, we've been crying foul that our government, our corporate, they always give us these red tapes, this language jargon that as a layman, I don't understand. I cannot go over it. I cannot jump over it. Now, my plea is that can we do the document so that a layman can understand? Because if you're talking about scores, codes, as a person whose hands are dirty in the industry, I don't understand that. So can we simplify the document and also try and reach as much as the layman down there? Because having it here at Blockberg, the person in Philippi, the person in Soweto cannot reach this place. It's far, So we need more engagements to the poor, not poor areas, but the layman areas. That's just my 2 cents. Thank you. That's just my 2 cents. That's your China, ne?
Okay, panel, over to you. Okay.
Yeah.
We took 3. We're going to take 3 and then take we had 3 questions.
Okay.
Thanks. Technology is not my strong point. Firstly, I'd like to apologize for anybody who does not understand the mathematics. I was told earlier today that I need to put it in maths lit form. I shall do that. Thank you very much for your comment on simplification. However, in a lot of the calculations, it's very difficult to simplify because that's what was prescribed by the generic scorecard. So when we're doing those kind of calculations, I will take it on board, and I thank you for your comment. And yes, we will try and simplify as much as possible for a broader understanding. To China Junior, China Senior, thank you very much for your comments and your input. It's greatly appreciated by us all. And I think that you've made some very, very relevant comments and given us a lot of food for thought. So that was just what I wanted to say in addressing that from you. And we can engage afterwards if you wish to, because in terms of health and safety, a huge portion of exhibitions and events that EXA runs, you cannot do anything unless you have an approved health and safety file. And it is legislated, it is governed, and there are health and safety companies that deal with it. So it is at an advanced level. If you'd like to know more about it, you're welcome to address any of us from EXA, but it is vitally important that any event, no matter how big or how small, and you're correct, an event doesn't matter, people don't understand the input of it. It's not a glamorous or a fancy industry. It's hard work, it's slog, it's labor. But health and safety is priority. So yes, we have worked very hard in working on our health and safety. So it is an absolute priority. No problem, I get you. I just wanted to reinforce that it is happening in practice.
Oh, should I take it? Okay. Oh, let me go to the mic.
Okay.
I also wanted to say with the OHS, once we are fully regulated with what you said, once the industry is fully regulated, you will be required to submit a WSP, which is a workplace skills plan. And you are required to train people on health and safety. And when you report on people that have been trained on health and safety, obviously we're looking at your AIC. AIC is your African, Colored, and Indians. And when you train your AIC people in the business, you are part of, you are compliant. And after you being compliant, you don't get compensated for it because it's a compliance issue. So it is happening, but once we get this done, then organizations will be forced to do it. Okay, and then the other question was around the verification. Yes, so the verification. So you do not apply to be verified. If I understood your question, you were saying if you are registered, if you have an MPO and you don't have a family, how do you get your sworn-in affidavit accepted when you submit your request? Is that the question? Okay, so one, you don't apply to be verified or to get a B-BBEE certificate. You need to earn a certain amount. You need to earn more than 50 million per annum, if correct. And then for you to do a sworn-in affidavit, it has to be done by a verifier, somebody who is qualified to do it. It has to be signed, and you have to produce documents showing that you own the business. And there are two things. There's a company and there's an NPO. An NPO, it is a non-profit organization. An NPO benefits from social economic development programs. Social development, economic development programs are those programs that are done by businesses to do good to the community that they work in communities that they belong to. And I think it talks to the other questions that lady was asking about the SED. So NPO belong into that space, but when you are a business, when you register your business and you want to submit for a tender or for a funding to do something, you don't have to apply for it. You just get a verifier that is commissioned by the B-BBEE Commission to sign in a sworn-in affidavit, and you obviously need to produce a certain documents to make sure that you are the sole owner of the business, to avoid fronting that Opa had alluded to earlier on, and you need to produce documents to show that you are actually qualified to do the work that you say you're going to do. And the sworn-in affidavit is not used as an application, but as a supporting document to prove that you are the B-BBEE level 1 for being the owner of the business and you are black. Sworn affidavit. The sworn affidavit at the police station is for some other things, but the one that we are talking about is a B-BBEE one. It's not done at the police station, no. We can take it offline. Thank you. I'm also going to take 3 sets of questions, and then, okay, I've got this gentleman here, and then I've got the other one there, and then I've got other one here, and then we'll come to you. I've noted 2 hands. Thank you.
Okay. I think, let me first introduce myself. My name is Odwa Stemela. I'm from Philippi Arts Center and the Community Arts Center Network of Western Cape. Okay, the question that I wanted to ask is the same question that I asked when we met in Arts Cape, and what I highlight, like, I think my good sir has already highlighted that in a way, but I'll just obviously use my own words. That are you, besides the numbers, but the whole entire language, you know, are you guys, do you think it's understandable, especially you come from Gauteng, right? And then you're still gonna go to other parts. Like, according to your observation, like, do you feel like the people are getting it as far as the one to your most, to the person at the end, because, and then it's not just about that, it's also about making sure that the companies get it, like you said, you are in the middle, right? And then now, one thing that you find in South Africa is that when it comes to implementation, it's like we have great ideas, we have great policy meetings that are happening all around, but the implementation is another thing. Obviously, that's not your role here. You are here to set up that. But now, in that, is there a way that it can be communicated that we know the past and we also know the status quo, as far as the government will say this on TV, that companies should stop putting people on 3 months probation and not hiring them afterwards, and then just keep on doing that. And then still companies will do it. I know companies in Bellville and Brackenfell right now that are still doing what the president said it must not be done in probably 2016, So now, like, we need, I don't know if maybe there's a way that the document itself can inspire that confidence that this document that is drafted now is not going to be treated like most of the other policies that and then I know it's almost asking for too much, because it's like, how are we going to predict the future? How are we going to predict that people are, when it's people, human nature, but we also have to, be very realistic, especially, I'm coming from Philippi, this to me is very, I'm looking at it on a local level, and I'm thinking one of the solutions to that would be to go to also the local level, not just, maybe this session is another one, right? But I think there should be, sort of built up sessions prior to this session on a local level, like municipal ward level, because now what's happening is that there is ward development forums that are forming in and around, and then they are apolitical, or at least they're supposed to be, and then now with that, those are our gateways that this information can also be shared, through the ward committees of arts and culture, for an example, that are almost in every ward. So I think there's a way to strengthening and making sure that, because the local government was also going to play a crucial role in the implementation of this, not just the national government, and then in making sure that that's set up, so that by the time this is coming as an official law, that the municipality is already there, ready to basically help and champion it on the ground. And then there's ways to do that in an engagement, public participation, but it has to be more aggressive in the, when I say aggressive, I mean like positive aggressiveness, so not that type, so yeah. So I just wanted to add those points. Thank you. Yeah, or the next, yes, thank you.
Gentleman at the back,
Good afternoon. I'm excited of seeing this document again. We saw it in the Artscape. It was analyzed and we discussed. Seeing it again now after having other sessions with the Western Cape province arts and culture and South African business, small business department of South Africa. Now it feels like all the puzzles are coming together. But now if the puzzles are coming together to make this new machine that you want us to convert the African gold, which is the arts, to become something that we can benefit from, I think even Miriam Makeba will be happy to see that there's a document like this. As the gentleman said there, that there was never a document like this before. So I just feel like we're now at the point that in the future we just need to look for champions who are going to champion this document, and as the people who are going to be behind those champions, saying now we're not just talking the document, we have built companies from the artists we have met out of all these provinces we have went to. Let's say, for an example, you have taken 5 people from Gauteng, you have taken 5 people from KwaZulu, you have taken 5 people from Cape Town, and those people have never had an idea of starting a business, have never had an idea what is the B-BBEE, BET, scorecards, and never had millions. So now you are saying we have these people. These are going to be our test subjects for the next 5 years. These are going to be the people who are going to show that this document works. We're not talking about communities. We're talking about just maybe 50 people. From those 50 people who don't have companies, make them register in front of you. Teach them the whole thing until they reach a certain level after 5 years and say, look, these people who have kept under our wing as the people who created this document, and now these are the people who we can say they will never go back to Dubai. They're going to stay here. They're going to dollar what they need to dollar here because you have taught them this is how to dollar the thing. So I'm happy. Yeah, man.
Good afternoon. My name is Luando Lese. I'm from Kailicha. The first question that I have is, okay, let's start with my statement. Can I ask you guys to just listen, because I will fight with you as I want you to fight with whoever you're going to take the document to. That is my request now. And the other thing is, there are a lot of questions that I have about the organizations that you say you represent, and you're in the private sector, and you're going to the government with the document, and we as people, we just ask. So how do I know if you guys as the private sector, when the government tells you something or questions you about the things that we are going to present to you, the ideas that we're going to propose to you, when you say, okay, no, it was not us who came with these ideas, and you just sit back and would you come to us with the response that the government is going to give you? And the other question is, these organizations that you represent, and there are others that are not here, like Sambra, and you have Sarah, and all those things. As a music composer or a production company or whoever is in the business, the audio business, why do I need you guys, whereas I can just take my music or whatever I'm producing and take it to Spotify, or TuneCore is the digital platform to release my music, and just to get away from all the documents that are never, the documents that I have to submit to all these organizations and never get the response from. Whereas if I go to YouTube, I just upload my music and get whatever I want, and I just get everything. Why is it so? Why should I just continue with this instead of just going the easy way? I know this is way beneficial for a lot of people, but there are other things, and I have a lot of questions, but unfortunately the time, I don't want to. Oh, okay. And also, when it comes to the BEE, I have a holdings company, and the BEE certificate states that the max of the company should be 10 million max. And in these companies, what the platform that we're talking about, the events industry, you need the amount, maybe you can go to 100 millions of budget, but you as a BEE certificate, when you have a BEE certificate, you're only entitled to 10 million maximum. So how is that possible to retain all those things, you know? And there are questions that I would like to ask, but I'd rather not. So those questions, but I think I will come on the next stage.
Okay, I just wanted to confirm if I understood your question about the 10 million. Are you saying when you've got a certificate for 10 million,
The certificate qualification, the level 1, amounts to 10 million maximum. So, like you say, you need to have the qualification, and you need to, except for the qualification, the experience, because companies do that. I come from university, then I need to go to work, but they will ask me, okay, do you have, how many years of experience do you have? Well, as I'm just a freshie out of university, I don't have any experience. How do I expect to be employed? You see? And now you're talking about the 50 million budgets and all that stuff, whereas on the level 1 of the certificate, you're only entitled to 10 millions. You see, how do I get to go to those other things?
Okay, so let's first say, let's start here. So with the B-BBEE certificate, you don't have entitlement. So let's get that out of the way. So there's no entitlement. We are checking how much you are making as a business so that we can classify you into 3, which is a small one, which is the EME. And then with the EME, you need to make an annual turnover of about 10 million annual. And then the second one, which is the QSE, which is between 10 million and 49 million. And with those two, if you are 51% and above black ownership, you get a SONA affidavit. You are classified as a B-BBEE number 1 or 2, depending on how much is your percentage of your people. Do you have women in your scorecard, or do you have women in your business? You don't have women. So there are a lot of things that we need to consider. And then when you are a generic scorecard, when you belong into not a generic, the designated, which is the one that you make more than 50 million. And then it's a full verification. And when it's a full verification, then we use those principles where we look at your elements, we look at your ownership. How is your ownership like? We look at your management. What is in your management? Who is in your management control? We look at your skills development. How much have you spent for skills development? We look at your procurement and supply development. We look at how much have you spent on you developing the EMEs, and then how much are you really using specific businesses. And you look at SED, which is your social economic development. How much are you spending in developing the communities? So that is a full verification, but when you are making more than 50 million per annum. I'm not sure if I understood the question, yeah?
Yeah, sorry, I think what you're doing is you're mixing up the question of BEE and the whole issue of qualifications or professional designations. And the two are completely unrelated. So in order to score highly on your BEE scorecard, you need to allocate a portion of your budget to training and skills development programs that lead to the award of a qualification or the maintenance of a professional designation. But when you apply for your BEE certificate, there is no question anywhere that wants to know what your qualifications are. They just want to know how much money you've made and how you've spent it. So it's got nothing to do with qualifications at all. And I think, maybe when we spoke about, when Lisa raised it earlier, spoke about professional designations, I tried to kind of explain how it worked. I regret having done so now, because I think it took us down a path that is completely irrelevant to the discussion. What we want to do is to encourage companies to spend money on training and skills development, on suitable training programs. Whether that's related to a qualification or a professional designation is irrelevant as far as your qualifications are concerned. So you're mixing the two things up, that they're not related in any way. Does that help you? No? Maybe just rephrase your question then, or no?
I think the question that you're asking relates to whether your business is a business that will have to comply with the provisions of this scorecard. Now, the reality is that you will only have to comply with the elements of this particular scorecard if your turnover is more than 50 million annually. Now, I very much doubt currently that your turnover is anywhere between 10 or 50 million. So it's not an area of consideration or concern that you need to be bothered about. If in 2 years' time you build your business to the point where it has a turnover of more than 50 million, you will have to take on board the elements of this particular document. And all you need to do at the moment, if you're applying for government funding that requires evidence of your BEE status, is you can download from the Department of Trade and Industry the exempt micro enterprise BEE affidavit, or the qualifying small enterprise BEE affidavit for companies with a turnover between 10 and 49 million. And that you can get signed by a commissioner of oaths, and it will be accepted as verification of your BEE status as a small or medium enterprise. So I think that's really the issue that we're dealing with here. I think that the other question that you asked in terms of the companies that are represented here today and the associations and who they represent, this gentleman here initiated this process more than 10 years ago because of a concern that black people were being locked out of the supply chain in terms of the live events and technical production services sector. Yeah, so I want to...
In fact, a number of those questions were highlights which we don't really understand the basis where it's coming from.
Yeah, so I think what the gentleman was asking is the bodies that are represented here, why does he need to get engaged with any of these bodies? Is that correct? No, he's confirming that, China. Can we just hold on? So I want to answer your question to say that every single one of these bodies represented here have been fighting to remove the barriers of entry for black professionals and for black business in the live events and technical production services sector for many, many years. And this document is the culmination of 10 years of engagement to put in place a legislative and a regulatory framework that will govern and hold accountable the transformation elements that need to be implemented to create a more equitable society and greater opportunities for black-owned businesses, and particularly black female-owned businesses. If you look at the element of the scorecard under black female representation, and why we have put in place radical targets to advance black women in the marketplace, both at the management level, but also under enterprise development. And so I can say to you categorically, it's in your interest. You're free to go and deal with Spotify and YouTube, who have their own intellectual property regimes and will exploit your intellectual property and your talent in no uncertain terms, because it's an open market. But if you want to make sure that your interests are represented in the South African marketplace, it's in your interest to associate and become an affiliate member of any one of these organizations, because these organizations have been working in that space of transformation and empowerment for many years and have engaged with this process precisely to address that legacy of exclusion and inequality that apartheid subjected our people to. So I hope that clarifies your concerns in those questions.
I think we had two more questions. The other one was, how are we mobilizing this document? And if we're going to have people that are going to be driving it on the ground, and that's the gentleman at the back who asked that question, to mobilizing, right? Champions of the document. So for any other codes, maybe I'll just briefly talk about, for any other codes, they have to be understood by the industry experts, meaning the people that will be verifying the documents, verifying the industry. They should understand what is the document, and I think that's where, after this session, when it's gazetted and approved, it should go there. And those are the people, and I need to say this again, we have respected, I'm going to use again the not candidate attorneys, CAs, chartered accountants. We have respected them for so long because they are expert in their fields, but they will not share what they do to be chartered accountants. They are people that are qualified as verifiers that are going to help businesses to be verified and qualified, and they get their B-BBEE certificate, and they are highly regulated. But I also want to say, maybe it's an opportunity to also say, if we do get the codes approved, we do also get funding to train other people in the industry, people that understand the industry. And the CETAs fund those people to be able to be qualified verifiers and skills development facilitators, to be able to verify and do the WSPs for the specific sector, which is what the other sectors are doing, to say, give us specific funding so that we can get our very own people to verify and do the audit for us. I'm going to hand over if there's anyone who wants to go further on that question.
In terms of championing, yes, I think that we are all champions of the cause, because we haven't just written a document, we've put our own belief system in this paper that you see. So everybody sitting here is very passionate about it, and we are non-profit organizations ourselves. So in terms of having champions, what we will urge you to do is to join the association that is best suited to your industry. And in doing so, that association will assist you in championing and working with the codes to get you to where you want to go to. Every association and everyone sitting over here wants to see everybody achieve greatness and everybody progress and learn and grow. But you need to also put in that effort and do your part. It's not just for us to champion it, but it is for you as individuals with talent and skill to join an association that's going to make or put you forward. And that is a choice you make. So if you are wanting to become a member, there are many options and many people that can mentor you within every association sitting here today. We are representing a very broad industry, but it is up to you as well it is up to us to champion this entire cause. So I think that the document is going to give you opportunity, but it's up to you to make sure that you take the opportunities it gives you to make it work for yourselves. Thanks.
Thanks, Leanne. Also, there was a question on the understanding of the document by people. Yes, we think this document is well understood by people. Perhaps you were referring to the language, English. Of course, in South Africa, there's 11 official languages, and we did speak to the department on transcribing this document into those languages. But our sector, it's event, technical, and production services. The language, the common language that is used is English. And the people we are addressing here and now, we think are the eventing, technical, and production people who would know and understand this language. We've so far, before this year, 2022, began in 2021 to do a virtual webinars. And sometime in June of this year, we started these road shows. If you look at the number, we've interacted with quite a substantial number of people in this sector, if we have not touched on everyone that operates in this sector. And for all those sessions that we've done, we've never had anyone saying they have a language problem with this document. Today it's the first time we hear that there's a language problem, which probably suggests that you are not operating in the event technical production sector. Thank you.
Thank you. I think the question was, maybe you want to elaborate on the question? Okay.
Thank you, Chairman. Mine is not the language. Yes, the language is English, but the jargon used you know, the jargon used in all of these documents is something that as people down there, we don't understand it. You know, instead of using codes, maybe you can use, I'll just make an example, ma'am. Instead of using codes, maybe you can use another word that I would understand. You know, it's not about English, but it's about what is this code we're talking about? Are we talking about a chess code, yeah? Are we talking about a key code? Are we talking about a pin code? You know what I mean? So we need those kind of understanding. I thank you.
Thanks. I don't think I need to engage in a dialogue over this. As I indicated to you earlier, that our sector is the last to develop these codes. There are many other sectors that they've already developed, and all of us are guided by what the government has prescribed on what to follow. And these terminologies and all of this are not our own creation. They are said and gazetted, and this is the legal language that is utilized by the government. In our document that we've presented in front of you, the very first part of it has a definition of all the terminologies. Whatever term or code that you are not clear about, this document has a detailed definition of each of the sectors. And so we will not understand if you don't understand any part or any jargon that is described in there. Thank you.
You comfortable? You don't want to say anything? Okay. I'm going to take 3 more questions, but I'm going to take the old hands. Yes. I'll note you, and then I note you, gentlemen, and then I'm going to give other people a chance first. I'll note you. Okay. Three people. Yeah, you can go.
Hi, Sheena from Penguin Farms, and this question is more directed to, I think, Quentin, regarding the skills development. So at the moment, we are on set. We have, for instance, someone starting in as a spark, coming in as a spark. Our gaffer leaves, so which means that our best boy is moving into the gaffer role, our spark is going into the best boy role, and we have a new spark coming in. So they're not necessarily with any learning institution, but promotion is happening, training is happening, you know. And so what we found over the years is that actually we're not getting any recognition for these promotions, for these, like, you know, learnerships, I would say, and development of people in the industry. Yet, like, they can leave there and they are equipped with a skill. They can move into go to a different production as a gaffer. But I mean, you know, and they've received all of the in-house training from us. So I think it's just to note, like, you know, when you guys do take this forward, like, could that be something that we could look at and not just ignore and be like, actually, you guys were not with the body, so, you know, those people aren't really seen as learnerships or anything like that. And then just on another one, we had paid for bursaries to an institution, and we had actually absorbed this student. She had qualified, she's got a degree. We had then said, okay, let's absorb her, and, you know, because she's now got her qualification, we are now doing in-house training. She's also now not just an internship, because at first it's an internship, now she's developing into we've absorbed her now, she's an employee. We were not recognized for that. We didn't get any points for that. We got the points for the bursary. However, we didn't get the recognition for, we have now developed someone, we are training someone in-house. So yeah, she's now an employee of ours, which we have, you know, we've taken all of the necessary steps, but unfortunately, guys, you know, it doesn't fall onto the scorecard. So, you know, we don't acknowledge that. So I think if that could also just be noted and also just taken to higher powers that may be. Let's give the recognition to this company that puts in the time, because me, myself, I'm out here training this girl, and, you know, so, but it's not recognized, it's not seen, this time spent and all of that. So, yeah, I think just on that note, if that could also just be taken into account. Yeah, thank you.
This is Mike. Okay. So, Sheena, can I just say that that's exactly what has been done in this particular scorecard document, is that those gaps that you're referring to historically, that we in the film and TV industry have struggled to get recognition for, is finally being addressed, because it gives you, under the category of development, for example, of, let's say, I'm assuming it's a black female woman that you've taken on board, that you've mentored, that you've invested time and energy in. Now, under the new scorecard, the draft scorecard, you are allowed to quantify that investment in terms of time and energy in the development and the promotion of that individual's career path, including the fact that you are the supervising de facto HOD person mentoring that person. There's a cost to company in terms of your time and energy, which can easily be quantified in a very simple calculation. And that quantification then goes into your reporting on skills development under the new draft scorecard, and it earns you recognition and points towards your verification certificate under that particular element of the draft scorecard. So all the concern that the industry has had around this particular document being an onerous document that will require an additional compliance burden is unfounded and unwarranted, because for the first time you now have a regulatory framework that recognizes that to date unquantified investment that we've not been able to capture as companies working in the film and television industry. And the same applies under the categories of enterprise development, corporate social investment, and then also advancement and promotion of people from middle management to senior management to executive management in the company. Like you say, you don't get the recognition and the people move on. And the next company, when the scorecard is gazetted and promulgated, is going to be able to get the benefit of what you've invested in the development of those people.
Thank you. And now we to go as an answer straight up. We'll go for the gentleman, because I think the gentleman here. Oh yeah, okay.
1 2 1 2 okay. Makhosini molweni nonke. I'm going to highlight few things, and I might be emphasizing on what Mr. China Junior said earlier on. A cry for a voice. I hope that the draft will be reachable to all the people of rural areas and townships, to all the marginalized masses of our people. I'm not sure if it has reached abantu abaninzi here in Western Cape, but it was my first time hearing of it. So I assume that nabanye maybe in the Eastern Cape, it will be the first time for them to hear of the draft. It is a powerful tool, I believe, and it is still a draft up until it is adopted by South African government. And education is the key to success. I'm so sorry to say sorry to those who think that education only refers to school. I don't want to say institution as home is the first institution. As a country, we have a problem of adopting draft that are discussed in small, closed corners. I hope that the traditional leaders are also engaged along with their different structures. Another thing that I wanted to highlight was that sometimes when we engage, we are limited by the language, whether the South African government is using language in many institutions, but we are not able to voice out our feelings to a great extent when we talk in English. And I believe that what my colleagues were saying is that it is difficult for many people of South Africa to discuss their needs in English. So it will be great that when it goes to other provinces, it can reach the most marginalized places, the rural areas and in townships, because nothing for us without us. And we need to be engaged with our language, whether it's going to be translated into English. But all the best with the tool that will be used for us. And it's still a draft, so it means that if there are changes that we need, they can be changed. Engos.
Sanbonan. My name is Sibusiso Mncwabe, the EXA chairperson. And firstly, I would just want to thank the board, the people that have come together, the different boards, to draft this thing, this sector code for us. And just one note to make, my brother, I hear the language barrier part, but right now we could have even started now and uchaze ngelanguage yakho njengamanje. Bakhona abantu la bangakwazi ukuthi betranslate abanye abantu, kodwa ke iqala ngokuthi kwathina kwamanje makuthiwa uunderstand uchaze ngolimi lakho. Bazochaza abanye bechazela abanye abangezwe. That's just one part. And then I must say thank you very much, guys, for putting this thing together. As much as it's a draft and we are here to comment on it, this is needed in the industry. I myself in the EXA association, I am fighting for internship, and I am fighting for black companies to come on board into the exhibition industry, especially because that's where I come from. So this is a fight that we have everywhere, in the eventing, in any other industry, especially in the events side. We are fighting for it. We're not just lying down. So this is the reasons why you have to be joining these associations, so that you can assist us in fighting. Because I can fight for it, but if there's no other black companies coming up to say, hey, what's happening, then my fight is useless. You know what I mean? But my other challenge that we do have is, how do we ensure that business to business also complies with the sector codes? Because that's another loophole that is there currently. A white business will deal with another white business, and they don't have to deal with the government. And that's a very big market. So maybe what we should also be doing is tabling suggestions on how government should be implementing this, especially for business to business. So, for instance, if they talking to their bank for a loan, because that's where then they will go. They don't go to DTIs and so forth, some companies. They'll go to the bank. How do we make sure that the bank says, what are your EMEs that you are developing and so forth? So those are also other things that we need to be ensuring and trying to nip in the bud. Ngiyabonga.
So, ma'am, thank you for the responding to that suggestion. Mine was a suggestion, it was not a question. Okay. But now I think I need to iron it so that it stays to a point that you understand that it is you who needs to translate. We are going to be the champions to help you translate what you need to translate. So, for an example, Miriam Makeba knew about the Freedom Charter. And then when she went on TV on stage, she sang about songs that will bring people towards what? The Freedom Charter. We are the artists. We know that whatever you are telling us the way forward to do with this document, we're going to take it and transform it and put it in a way that other people who don't even have to understand the BE and what, they're going to see it from us that we have been built by what? By this document. So now, that's what I was saying, is I won't take my own ideas and decide, know what, I'm going to stand for this document. No, I want to take the heads of the people who made this document, make them shape what I need to tell the people. Because we are the voice. You made the document for us. So we know that it needs to be now convected in a musical way or a dramatic way so that the other people can understand, okay, something is moving in the arts. Let's follow the arts boat, you know? Because now the boat is there, it's been built, but we don't know how to call the animals in, how to call other people in. And then when the water is coming in, then everyone is like, hey guys, why are we sinking? And then there's a flood. So we just want to find a way of bringing the people inside your boat. It's your boat. You know, we don't want to raise another flag. We want to raise the flag that you all raised it, and then we move forward. That's the translation. That you need your champions. No more talking, because this document, when I send it to Crossroad, no one is going to understand. Like, You know, I want to send it as a music or something, yeah, man.
Thank you so much. Do we have anyone to respond to, I think the gentleman here, I just wanted to say the industry is struggling to regulate the businesses that are saying we're not going to operate with government. We're just operating with each other. But let me tell you, as indicated earlier on, there are other related laws that are guiding businesses. For example, now with the employment equity, for you to be in business, you need to be compliant. And for you to be compliant, you need to get a certificate that says you are compliant. If you're not compliant, then you pay a fee. So they are going to feel the pinch, and it's going to force them to operate and to be quite compliant with any other laws. It's a struggle now for any other businesses and any other industry, but we're working on it from the commission, from the B-BBEE commission, but you can take it.
You know, I understand very well most of the speakers where they come from, and I sympathize with them. And I think I did meet it earlier on through opening remarks of the chairperson, that the creative and cultural workers have suffered for such a very long time. And to an extent that they don't have platforms to raise such challenges. I'm glad that we haven't ruled anyone out of order, even if people were not relating issues that speaks to the cause. However, I want to bring to one particular point, Chairperson. There's been a constant view that join organizations. I remember, was it 2015, when Jacob Zuma invited us at Sentin. When he left that session, because the whole cultural structure was there, when he left that section, he said, you guys need to go and be organized. Because they discovered that everyone who was talking about his personal challenges and interests. Now, as government entity, they cannot be accountable for you as an individual. But when they deal with you as a group, they are able to say, this is what we have done for this particular aspect. So one advantage of that is that individual institutions and organizations have their own programs. I'll give you a typical example, which Samba is busy with now. We're engaging the department now. It cannot be correct that every event of national importance is done by government. They are not promoters. They are not events people. And that is a work that we once did with the previous government. I think it was during Thabo Mbiki's time. In fact, to an extent that even the inauguration itself of Thabo Mbeki, we did it as Samba. Now, if that happens in that level, it should also happen in all provinces and regions because they've got all these projects. They are not doing that for whatever reason. We know what are those reasons. So you will not be able to understand those dynamics if you're sitting at home as an individual. It's very paramount for you to be part of these institutions. I also know that this province is even worse. You know, black people in particular who are like me are marginalized. That we know. And we've been talking to various other stakeholders to say, look, let's try and reorganize ourselves as Western Cape. I might be sleeping in Gauteng, but everything of mine is still registered for Western Cape. So I'm encouraging you. You have heard about each and every one here. After this session, whilst people are busy eating, engage each and every one so that you are able to get involved. Thank you, Chairperson.
In closing, I want to say thank you so much for being such an awesome audience. You've made it very, very likable to be here. So thank you from me, thank you. I'm going to call the chairperson just to close the session for us. May God bless you, thank you.
Chairperson, where's food? Man, people must eat. Yes. But where is it? There's no smell here. You can't keep people for 4 hours and they don't eat.
Once more, before we close the session, there was a question asked by this gentleman sitting here on what are we doing to give back to the community. And my response earlier was that we are not government. We will not be able to respond to that. And I indicated that at least today amongst us we have a government representative. And I will give him an opportunity to respond. I want to do that now. Mr. Tlhatswayo, that's the question. Will you please come and respond before we close this session? Over to you.
Don't be diplomatic.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson, and our moderator and the honorable members of the forum, and the invitation to dance, Leanne. I've noted it. I would like to reserve it to the time when we are implementing this code, so that we can then be in a celebrative mode. Chairperson, I'm not going to belabor responding to the very, very important question that the young gentleman had raised here. The department, you might know, I think you do know, has got several interventions in the sector, and I would like to highlight one of those, which most of you might also be aware. There's been quite a lot of engagement around that intervention, particularly because of the experiences and circumstances that the unfortunate circumstances that the sector found itself due to the unfortunate COVID pandemic, which resulted in everything coming to a halt. The intervention that I'm talking to is called the Mzansi Golden Economy. How many of us in this room, if by the sign of hands, can show me if they're aware of Mzansi Golden Economy? Okay, I'll just be very brief about it. This is a strategy that was adopted by the then Department of Arts and Culture, now the Department of Sports, Arts and Culture. But Mzansi Golden Economy is specifically focused on issues related to the cultural creative industries. And its essence is basically to incentivize the sector such that its economic ability begins to rise, as well as it is a strategy with which the department is driving the awareness to the broader government sector, including the broader South African private and just public, private sector and just public, in terms of what somebody might have referred to as the gold of the nation. Hence, it's called Mzansi Golden Economy, because we're raising the awareness that the cultural and creative industries are actually an economy that has got to be recognized similar to other sectors, because we do, as a broader cultural creative industry sector, contribute quite significantly to the GDP. So, and hence this Mzansi Golden Economy strategy was adopted. It has got the strategy has got several work streams. I'll just highlight one or two of them. There was a plan to do a national cultural industry skills academy, but it was then reviewed into just a fund where people can submit their proposals for workshops, for training activities, and so forth. And there's also a call for proposals that look at touring ventures. A touring venture is a cultural creative industries organization, company, project, or product that is being either exhibited or performed at a local province or different provinces, or even internationally, including throughout Africa. That's a touring venture. And then there's cultural events. Cultural events are festivals or theatrical productions or any kind of performance or event that you host either in a community hall or either in a formal theater space or elsewhere, or even now lately, particularly because of the awakening from the pandemic, we realized that we can also work stronger in the digital space. So we do have also that kind of, or those kind of programs that the department is running. Obviously, it's not sufficient funds available there, but we do annual open calls where the department announces for the sector to be able to submit their proposals in order to be able to compete for the funding that I've just mentioned. Over and above the others, we've got what we call the art bank, where artists submit their work of art, and then the art bank has got a way that they work with the private sector for that artwork either to be sold or even hired or rented by even departments or even the private sector for the benefit of whoever the visual artist uploaded his artwork. Then besides that, Mzansi Golden Economy, unfortunately, there was a call for proposals that was opened. I think it closed on the 4th of November, but I beg to be corrected, but it is closed now for 2023, projects that are starting in 2023. We're working hard as a department to try and see how we can make this tool workable with the sector, because from time to time we're experiencing challenges. Firstly, the magnitude of the needs are much higher than the budget that is available. Secondly, the timing of how are these call for proposals announced. Sometimes it's a bit skewed to what the sector is trying to do, because you submit a project and you need it to happen this year, only to find that the fund is still not yet available. So we're trying to look at ways of aligning so that we all work together, and this strategy benefits us so that we can really uplift the economic impact of the sector. It is quite a good strategy. I think it just needs. We are currently also looking at how we will review it, and there will be ways of engaging with the sector about that. And then on the other hand, through our institutions, some of them you may be aware of, like we've mentioned Artscape, we do provide funding there to these institutions to run what we call mentorship programs, where on the side of the artists or the creative or the content producers, they are able to go there into that fund or to that particular institution and access these programs. I know they've got them in the State Theatre and the Playhouse, Market Theatre, and so forth. On the side of the your sector, the events, technical and production services sector, we do not yet have specific funding that relates to what I've just spoken about under MGE. But what we're trying to do at the moment, in the meantime, is to support the sector with on those existing interventions that they have and that they are proposing, and we're trying to gradually grow our participation and support to the sector. Hence, we came on board also to this particular avenue because it's one important area that we've also identified. What we did, we didn't want to work from the thin air. We needed to have something as a base document, so we created I won't elaborate how we got there, but we have what we call now a sector and technical and events sector strategy, which guides us in terms of how we engage with the sector on different aspects of the sector's needs. For example, I will highlight key work areas of that sector strategy. It is human capital development. So there's been very interesting proposals that have been coming through to the department for the department to look at how can support some institutions towards training and establishing training institutions that are strong for the sector to be able to access the training that you've been talking about. And then we have another work area which is about policy development, under which this process is being facilitated. We title it transformation as well within that sector strategy. Then there's another one, another key one I would like to highlight, because I've had a question relating to how do we make the sector aware, or how do we get everybody to know about this, about what we're doing and about the BEE. So we do have another work stream within that strategy. It will become more implemented in the following year, 2023. Well, I'm hoping that by that time, we've got our code, we know we're sort of getting to move. And then we will look at a way how we can work together with the sector in terms of, firstly, just the awareness of the sector technical services or events technical services and production, how it works. Secondly, how the BEE itself works. There are some training, there's some training that's happening at VETS, if I'm not mistaken. There are some courses where people can go and learn. But of course, we do also want to say there may not be people who, not everybody can go to that particular course. So we will try to find ways to join in what I mentioned earlier, the mentorship programs in our existing institutions, and partner with other private sector organizations where we can run workshops and work with the DTIC in terms of to educate people on how to access and how to work with BEE. As I speak, we've already started talking to CATHSITA, where we've identified that people are battling to understand how to work these issues of accreditation. Very soon, you will be receiving an invitation sometime now in December, where there will be a workshop for the sectors to come and attend where CATHSITA will be announcing a number of interventions that they are working on, including those of accreditation and other funding mechanisms that they have. So there's quite a number of things that are happening. It's just that we need to find a way to market them to the sector, to be aware of them. And I believe that as we build the database, because we are also struggling a little bit with the database within the events and technical services sector, that we can have and work and interact with directly. It's a bit challenging when you have to work a database remotely, because it's difficult to interface on the phone number, follow up on the phone number with a particular 10 people and say, do come to the workshop, do come to such a thing, just encourage. But when you have sent an email and you wait for the person to respond, you send again, are you coming? You never know. So we're trying to build an interactive database. And I think in the few interventions that we've done through the forum as they were running these workshops, we've begun to have some kind of a substantial database that has got phone numbers and so forth, so that you are aware of what the department is doing. And as I'm sitting there, I'm actually populating to other people who are not here, the issue of the link, you know, we are talking, we're here, you know, add your voice, perhaps join the conversation, and eventually what I would really wish to hear us doing, I would say, is to say, implement the code and let us dance, Leah. Thank you, I will end there.
Thanks very much, Mr. Tlhatjwayo. That was a very elaborate response, and it clearly indicates that there is no irrelevant question. I noticed when Mr. Tlhatjwayo asked the question on who is familiar with Mzansi Golden Economy, there were about 5 hands except the one from the gentleman who asked the same question. And so you must have received the right answers in terms of what is being done to those communities that you were not aware of the activities. I was not here in June when the forum came to do its first session here, but I received reports that were not so positive. And juxtaposing those reports against today, I'm glad to say that today's session was the most fruitful session, very informative, and we interacted with each other very well, and I'm sure there's no one who did not get a response from the question they had asked. I want to thank you for making your time here. This document, unfortunately, was to be on the website and gazetted by the 14th because of the technical glitches that the government is experiencing now. And I only learned yesterday, in fact, that the government printing works is the one responsible for development of this document, for the posting on the website for gazetting purposes. They are charging 1,000 rand for each page. If you look at our document, it has 118 pages. And this came at the time when you will know that the government departments prepares their budget around March, April of this year. And so this huge chunk of budget was not budgeted for, hence the delay in getting it gazetted. I'm now informed that it will be on the website at the end of this month. I'm not sure of the precise date, but sometime around the 29th, 30th of November, it will be on the website. So you still have an opportunity other than now to still make further inputs into that document. And also on the Department of Sports, Arts and Culture, there's an email which you can utilize to send your further comments and inputs. We as the forum are available to respond to any other question or concerns that you might have, and will be willing to assist you in that regard. In so saying, we are adjourning this session, and we're saying enjoy the rest of the day. I understand lunch is not ready yet, but in the next 15 minutes or so, it will be here. But tea and drinks are available until that time that lunch will be ready. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.